This is Michael William Denny of ThunderShamanism.com. So today I'm going to talk to you more about the book, The Thunder Wizard Path. And today I'm going to touch on a couple of different chapters, but they're interrelated. And that is the 5 elements and the 8 directions in the 9 worlds. So if you're not familiar with it, you can go back and watch the previous videos about this book, The Thunder Wizard Path. I think I've got a link down there if you want to go ahead and get it. And, again, what I'm doing is I'm not trying to give out exactly what's in each of the chapters. I'm giving an overview, and I'm sharing some of the evolution and thought that I've had, sort of a behind-the-scenes kind of, DVD extra or whatever for the book. But in the book, there are some very specific exercises in there. We talked about the Meginjord or Thor's belt. I tell you how to do that. I tell you how to do the Hool breath and the Hool breath posture. And in this next chapter, we talk about the 5 elements. I teach very specific energy work for the 5 elements, which direction to face and, all that kind of stuff. So, but let's talk about the 5 elements first off. So in many traditions, you have the 5 elements. In the Western tradition, sometimes they only have 4 elements, which is really too bad because there's actually 5. The 4 elements would be air, fire, water, earth, right? But in reality, you can add wind in there. So you have earth, you have ether, air, fire, water, earth. Sorry, I said wind. Ether. Sometimes people leave ether out. No, but ether is one of the elements. And in the Chinese tradition, you have the same thing. And in the Hindu tradition, you have the same thing. In the Chinese tradition, ether is called wood and air is called metal. But they're both connected. In fact, somebody once told me that the word sword meant air. So, metal and air have this connection as well. And I found, and people stumble on this. I stumbled on this for a long time. I'd been working in Taoist stuff, and I said, what about the 5 elements and how do they correspond? And people get really confused. But truth of the matter is it's very simple. And I've proven it to myself that wood is ether and metal is air. So 5 elements. Ether, air, fire, metal, and water. Now, what's important to know about these elements when it comes to energetic work is this is not arbitrary. One of the problems that I've found in Western magical traditions, and especially with people trying to reconstruct European disciplines, is that we still operate in the West from this idea that the elements are these, they're symbolic. There was one book I read that was supposedly reconstructing Germanic, tribal, whatever, and he had all kinds of different elements in there. He had salt and iron, and then when it came down to actually what do you do with it, he didn't know. So clearly to him, it was just some sort of symbolic thing. He was, who knows what, trying to differentiate it between, Wicca and everything. Listen, there's a science here. And I'm going to tell you straight off, if there wasn't a science, part of what I've been doing is trying to reconnect the science between all of these different traditions. If there wasn't an actual science that you could track and that you could feel the effects of, I wouldn't do it. I have no interest in dealing with arbitrary, purely symbolic nothing. I'm not interested in just the idea of creating a path that's unique to my cultural heritage. I could care less about that. As it turns out, there is a path that is from my ethnic heritage that also follows this science of spiritual energy work. And so I share that in this chapter here. So basically what I'm saying is that the 5 elements are the same. Now, we don't have any written information from the pre-Christian European times where they go into depth talking about the 5 elements like they do in the Hindu or in the Taoist tradition. So we have to look at the myths. And so that's what I was doing. I was looking at the myths. And one of the things that happened when I first started doing this is after spending 20 years in these other disciplines and learning how to read mythology, learning how to read the symbolism in that, because that's the same is true whether it's Hindu or whether it's Taoist. You know, if you have this book, even if it's a book that's supposed to tell you the mastery of, you know, how to meditate and become an immortal or something, they're going to throw in these symbolic things, and if you don't know what it means, you won't know what it's connected to, and you won't be able to achieve mastery of it. So the same is true with our ancestors. Our ancestors put it in the myths. We talked about Meg and Jord, you know, Thor's power belt already. But the same is true with the elements. And so now we get to the 8 directions in the 9 worlds. So the myths are very clear about the elements. We have, in the center, we have Middle Earth. And so that's where the element of earth is. Earth is earth. We live on earth. That's very clear. That's in the center. That's where we know that Middle Earth is. It says right there, it's in the middle. So the center is earth. North is the realm of the waters, the mist home, the realm of the primordial waters. So that's where water is located, according to the Icelandic myths. In the south is the fire home, the world of the fire. And in fact, it's the water and the fire that come together that helps create all the whatever. But so that's very clear. There's no doubt about that. Water's in the north, fire's in the south. In the east is where Thor lives, and where the giants live. And the giants, and you know, Thor and the giants themselves represent this expansive power, you know. And you know, the thunder gods are always in the east in all traditions. So we have the power of ether, which is connected to that. Ether is the power of, you know, that first spark of life, thunder and lightning and cleansing and creation and all that. That's in the east. That's where Thor goes. That's where the giants live. So that's clear. Ether is in the east. In the west, you have air. Now, in this one, it's hard. You have to know how to read the myths in order to figure it out. So one day I saw, you know, I knew that in other traditions that that air or metal was in the west. And so I was looking for that in the myths. And sure enough, when you read about the Vanir, which are the Wains. Now the Wains live in the west. The Wains are the gods of earth, the gods of wisdom, the gods of magic and fertility. And when you read about them in the myths, I forget which one it is. It's the one where Thor and the dwarf are, you know, talking about it. And anyway, everything having to do with the Vanir has to do with wind. They ride the clouds. You know, everything. You read it, it's all, they experience everything through wind. So that means that their element is wind. So we've got a clear connection in all traditions. In the Germanic tradition, in the Hindu tradition, and in the Taoist tradition, all 5 elements are in all of these, you know, these the 4 cardinal directions plus the center. Why is that important? Well, we could say, well, they must have gotten together and shared information with each other. I find that very unlikely because, you know, we're talking about thousands of miles, and we're talking about, you know, ice ages, and we're talking about tens of thousands of years. You know, I just seriously doubt that the Taoists traveled over to the Germanic tribes and taught them this, or vice versa. So what's the other? The other 2 possibilities. One is that the ascended masters are teaching this science to all the different tribal people all over the world at the same time, and they're interpreting it through their own culture. And the third option is that this is an energetic science. So the end result is, you know, undeniable to me, at least, that we are dealing with a science here of energy magic. And so that's how it needs to be approached. Now, I can say that if you work with these elements in this kind of a way, you will feel a visceral, real, practical experience with them. And so it's important when it comes to working with the elements that you know what you're doing. Because if you just haphazardly, once you tap into them, you start throwing them around, you can cause yourself all kinds of harm. So it's incredibly important that you know, you have a teacher, or that at the very least you have, you know, a clear method. So that's one of the things that's important. Again, this is real stuff. I don't care about, you know, trying to preserve some cultural this, that, or the other thing. It just so happens that our cultural, our ancestral shamanic ancestors had this same knowledge, and they preserved it within the myths. So next one, we're going to go ahead and talk about the 9 directions. So anyway, there's links here to the book. There's links to the Hool breath here, which is the a foundational exercise. Link to Celestial Qigong, which is extremely powerful, most powerful energy work I've ever done. I highly recommend it. And a link for apprenticeship. Apprenticeship just means that you work with me for 1 hour a week, either by phone, by Skype, or in person. And you can work with me for as long as you want. If you try me for a month, you don't like it, don't worry about it. But hopefully, I'm looking for students who want to stay with me for the long haul and really learn and master this kind of stuff. So I make that available to you as well. That time is running out because people are signing up. So, I recommend, if you're thinking about doing it now or later, I recommend doing it now because, at some point I may not have time to deal with, more than a certain number of people. So anyway, that's it for now. Until next time. Next time we're going to talk about the 9 directions.